Welcome to the Startup Grind.
All right, welcome, Jeff. Take a seat.
Yes,
Would
thanks
you
for
like
having
to sit
me.
down? Yeah. And welcome everyone for coming along. Really excited to be able to speak with Jeff tonight. So I'd like to start off with what brings you to Bali?
Yes, what brings me to Bali? So I came here for a conference, and so I do a lot of speaking. So I've been doing the digital nomad thing since 2015, and anytime that somebody sends me an email or a contact form that says, I'd like you to come and speak in this location, and if it sounds like an awesome location like Bali, I'm like, I'm in, count me in. And so somebody invited me to speak at the Digital Marketing Skillshare Conference earlier. Actually, I have no concept of time right now. I think it was in October. Yeah. I've been here for a little while here, and I stuck around and I met Sla at the conference. He's one of the students in one of my courses, and he said, come do this as well. And so my wife and I are here for a month. We basically maxed out the amount of time we could be here before I go back to the US, and so that's why I'm here. And so we took basically 2 hours of me on stage and turned it into a month, some semi-holiday here.
Cool. So you've done a few things, and at the moment things are changing or transitioning a little bit for you. So Jeffalytics, tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what I'm known for right now. My background is I have an agency back in the United States that does digital marketing services for companies. And so when I say digital marketing services, we would do pay-per-click, like Google AdWords management for people. We'd manage their website analytics. We would make sure that they showed up in search engines, all the different buzzwords you have around digital marketing. We provided those services for like Fortune 500 companies in the US and some international ones as well. And I did a lot. I mean, we basically worked at it for 10 years. I still own part of the company, but I got a little burnt out. And as I was getting burned out, I was like, well, what would I really be happier doing versus, doing work for these clients? Excuse this bug here in front of me. Doing work for clients, and I said I would like to travel the world. Actually, that was what I wanted to do. Is what I'm doing right now. It's actually a version of the dream that I wanted to have. And I said, well, how do I get to that point? How can I get to the point where I can do this thing, do the things that we all dream of doing? And I was like, nobody knows who I am. So if it looks like I'm just flailing, it's because there's a bug like right in my face. So. What steps do I need to take? How do I get to the point where I can actually do this thing? And I said, well, I need to have some kind of personal brand. I need to be known. Because I was not known at all before I started this blog. So I was known inside of my company. I was like a big fish in that small pond of my company. We were 50 people. I was like the man, right? But nobody outside of that knew who I was. So I did all kinds of different personal branding things. I joined the board of a marketing association I'm from Minneapolis and St. Paul in the United States. Joined a board there, started an organization about search marketing there, and then the final step to get noticed, to get speaking gigs, to do these things was I created this blog, and I couldn't think of any name at the time, and I knew that I wanted my name to be known because nobody knew who I was, and Jeffalytics was short and sweet, and the .com was available, and so I decided to just register a domain, and that's about 5 years ago, and I've been writing ever since and building up my personal brand since then.
Perfect. It's interesting that you mentioned that because, as I was saying to you before, we're here, some of them in the room are here with our iLab program, which, by the way, is Bali backwards. Okay. So we're here part of it, and today we actually worked on their personal brand.
Oh, great.
And telling them the importance of having that, and you've just clarified that. So before that, you were obviously doing things that you didn't need to be as known. However, what I read about you was that you're in the top 25 of pay-per-click experts. So you must have had a brand back then to have been recognised of that and to be listed and, to be out there in the market. So what's the difference between then and now?
Yeah, for sure. So, one of the things, in order to sell services, you need to have credibility, right? So I needed to prove that my company was credible. So I studied for 2 weeks to pass the Google certification exam so that I was Google certified. And then I created a fake employee for my company and got them certified too so that I could pass as a certified company. So I basically was like, I need a Google certification, otherwise people aren't going to trust me with their advertising dollars. We blossomed that. I ended up managing over $25 million in Google AdWords spend after that initial beginning, where I had to like fake that I had 2 people so that I could get certified with Google. I just look at like who has what I want, who's doing who's successful in this area, and what makes them successful, and then what's in the realm of possible. What are certifications I can get? What do people think is credible? What are these things that can give me a leg up in the competition? Now, some of these things I just wanted to do for personal pride. Some of these things was a pure strategic thing for the company. Like we got, for example, we submitted ourselves to the Inc. magazine 5,000 companies list, and we made that 5 times. Now, that wasn't for me at all. That was more for just the validity that our business is a viable business. And so I would do all these different things. And one of those, I got people, I did a submission campaign to the top 25 PPC Experts list, because a lot of these lists can be gamed somewhat, or not so much gamed, but a lot of them are subjective. Yeah. And so I just basically put it out there, and I said, hey, vote for me for the top 25, and then I have this list of like 5,000 people, and they all voted for me, and I made the list. Yeah. And so a lot of these things I just do because I see it out there, and I'm like, why not me? Why can't I be at this point? What do these people have that I don't? And it turns out that a lot of these certifications and awards are they're just based on one person's opinion or the data that they have available to them. So that's sort of a background as to why I did that. And now the transition, I think no matter where you're at, you should try to find some kind of, whether it's personal validation, like I'm good enough to be here. That was where I first started out, was like, am I good enough? I would always ask myself that. I'm like, I'm doing this every day. I read every article. I look at every source. I'm researching my craft all the time. But am I like here? Am I here? Where am I on the spectrum of things? And so that's why I started to do the certifications. And now it's actually similar. It's just a different pursuit. Yeah. My pursuit now is different than my pursuit was 5 years ago, than it was 10 years ago, than it was 5 days ago, really. I mean, it's sort of changing and evolving all the time.
Yeah. So you've trained like 10,000 people in Google
over 10,000
certification?
People. Yep.
Yeah. So, and is that just from training through your company, or how did that work?
So here's how my training worked. My agency, my business, the digital marketing business, we could never find talented people that we could hire into our organization. So we were growing really fast. People wanted to work with us. All these certifications, all these things were working, and and we were overworked. I couldn't get the job done, and so I needed to hire people. And when we went out to hire people, there was nobody that had these certifications that I was just talking about. Nobody was even close to it. And so I started an internal program where I would hire somebody who didn't have the skills, and then I would get them to the point where they would get certified. And I forced everybody in my company that touched a Google account to get certified. Yeah. And we actually had 12 people certified. We were the most in our state by far, by like a fathom, like 2 or 3 times more than anybody else, because of this program I did internally. And then somebody launched a training school in Minneapolis, and they used the certified Google logo on there, and I knew they weren't certified. So I wrote them a nasty letter, and I said, hey, you're not certified. You can't put this on your website. I'm the only one in town. I'm the only game in town. And they said, well, why don't you come teach at my school? Oh, wow. And so that's how I started teaching, is to external people. He's like, okay, well, I want to keep that logo on my site, so come into my school and teach. Yeah. And I did that, and it ended up being cool. And then like a face in the crowd moment where I was like teaching just like this, and somebody in the crowd happened to be the program manager at a university. They said, I want that at our university. Yeah. And I said, are you sure? Do you think should I be doing this? Like, I have no training. I'm just the guy who wrote an angry letter to the training school guy. Suddenly I'm an adjunct at a university, which I didn't think was possible. I didn't think I was qualified. And they said that it was the highest rated program they've ever had. I was like, okay, well, I'm onto something here. This is working. And so the only way that I could continue to teach and fulfill my dream of traveling and fulfill my dream of not having to do consulting work and grinding it out every day in a cubicle in Minnesota was I started teaching it online. And so that's what ended up happening. Is I failed launching online courses the first time I did it. I actually spent about 18 months, and I have nothing to show for it. So my first 18 months of online teaching was something that I deleted. Like a mulligan. Like, basically I just spent a year and a half thinking that I was onto something, and it ended up just it doesn't exist anymore. I let the domain name expire because it's like expiring like how terrible of an experience it was. And then I finally hit it, and then now since 2015ish, I've been working on how the heck do you get people to take your online course? How do you get them to take yours versus the ones from other people? What are the channels where you can market it? How do you convince them to do this? What is the pricing point? Basically all the things about running an online business, doing what I was doing in the offline world. Yeah. And so that's sort of how my transitions happen. And I would say that I'm still figuring it out. And some people I'm far along compared to some people, and I'm not even close to where other people are at. And so it's an ongoing thing where you just have to learn something new basically every day, and then you have to implement it, and you have to actually act on it. That's the big piece of it.
How relevant do you think it is for people that are starting out? So if there's some that may be here or some that may be listening in that are just looking to start a business, that they actually do go out and do some more one-to-one type consulting as opposed to just starting online. What do you think the difference is? Can someone actually start just something online?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. So one of the things that I think made me a better teacher, the bug's back again. One of the things that I think made me a good teacher was that I got to see looks on people's faces as they were confused as I was trying to explain something that was like so normal to me that I was just like, yeah, this. And then they'd just be like, what? And I'd be like, well, no, it's this. And then they, what? And so then I'd be like, okay, well, we need to go back to the basics. And so when you're in a classroom and you're talking to somebody, you're having a dialogue, you can actually address that. You can go deep. You can use the time available to you to get to that point. And so in person, I got the feedback right away. I was able to go through that process. And it took a couple iterations of teaching the course, but eventually I had an outline as to here's what people are going to go through. Here's the journey I need to take them on. And that's an experience that I could have only had in person. Or I could have iterated that online, right? I could have done the same thing online, but I wouldn't have been able to see somebody's look on their face. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't have been able to have that same sensory teach. I don't know about you. I know a lot of you are educators. I don't know if you teach to an avatar, but I teach to an avatar now. So I actually have that look of that confused person in the classroom, and I have it in my head right now. I can see them. I can see them like, I'm not quite getting what you're saying, Jeff. And I make sure that everything I teach online now and I teach in that environment, that person, I'm like, would they understand this? Would they be cool with this? Would they be like, yeah, this is starting to make sense? Or would they be like, oh no, this is not happening here? So I sort of built that into my persona, and I basically have tried to get better at storytelling, because I think that one of the things is in person, like I could, like on a long enough timeline, we'll come to a conclusion in this talk today. We'll have an understanding if we're having a dialogue, right? And we'll get there pretty fast. The more we do it, the better off we get. But online, that's not the case. You actually need to assume their questions beforehand. You actually need to go through the process of anticipating where they're going to be confused and then addressing that before they get confused. So you actually have to be much more resourceful. You have to do a lot more preemptive educating. You can't make any assumptions, and you have to assume that nobody knows what you're talking about, but you don't want to condescend them. That's the art. That's threading the needle. Like you need to give them the information they need, but you don't want to belittle them or make it like talking like, oh yeah, oh you're so dumb now. You don't do that. You have to get through that progression piece. And so that's something that you could do that online. You could absolutely do this online, but you would have to go through a lot more failure, and you have a lot less feedback, because in an online world, nobody gives you comments. Nobody gives you feedback. About 1% of my list will actually respond to something that I say, and I have a very engaged email list. You know what I mean? So if you send something, actually it might be 0.1% from a comment perspective or a reply to an email. So if you send out 1,000 emails, you're lucky to get one response. And this is like from somebody who subscribed and opted in to work on your list. That's just how the feedback mechanism works online. You do a one-to-one dialogue and you get there a lot faster. So what I've started to do for my products, since I don't have the luxury of teaching in person as much anymore, since I'm traveling full-time, is I actually, before I'm going to launch a product, I'll do an offer and I'll say, here's what I want. I want to answer any question you have about this topic. And I send it out to my list. My list is like 17,000 people right now, and I'll get that 0.1% response rate, which means that I have to do 17 calls. That's enough. That's enough for me to validate something. So I'll actually validate with them. I'll do a one-on-one call. I'll record it. I'll answer their questions, and then I'll go to my agenda afterwards, and I'll get to the point where I have a pretty good understanding of how they would react to this type of product or service I'm putting out there. So I do validation. I still do the in-person stuff, or the equivalent of in-person, but I do it through like Google Hangouts. You could do it through a Skype call. You do it through modern technology, and now you're validating your idea without having to like go through the whole process of creating something. And yes, I just committed to 17 hours of talking to people. That's a long time. But it's actually invigorating for me. It's really fun to do that. Like, I learned so much from those calls, and actually that's my avatar that I use when I create a product, when I put something out there. And so that's sort of my way of bridging the gap. Because I can't debut a class in a classroom anymore. I don't have that luxury because I just don't. I can't do that. So I have to do it in the way that I use.
Okay, so going on from the avatar, how did you determine who your avatar was? Because I mean, so many out there in business are looking at their market as being anyone that will pay them money, as opposed to getting the right market. So how did you determine yours?
Yeah, I mean, the more that I learn about storytelling, the more that I learn that a lot of what we're trying to do is we're trying to solve a problem for our former self, who we were before we had the solution. And so, for example, a lot of times the avatar that I use is dumb Jeff. Yeah. Stupid Jeff who didn't get this thing right, who just banged his head against the computer screen and wanted to give up 10 times. And then how Jeff figured it out and how that made everything from that point forward better. And so I'm trying to get better at that because that's an easy one. Because if I've struggled with it and then I've solved the problem, then making it accessible for others, it's coming from the heart. It's coming from that position. Also, it's these one-on-one calls. So it really is, people that I've talked to, and that I sort of write to them. So I almost everything I do when I do a speech, when I talk to somebody, I sort of have I just think of who that person is, and I'm just talking to them. Now, one of the things you'll find in the online world is the temptation is to go with the fact that the online is gigantic. It's limitless, the number of people you can reach, and to try to reach them all. That does not work. When I said I had 18 months where I created something and then I ended up deleting it and throwing it away, it was like the jack of all trades, master of none. I was like, I can do all these things. I'm going to do all the things for you. If you just sign up, I'm going to do it all. And I didn't deliver on that promise because it was too much. I was stressed out. I was like, man, I'm not even going to be able to do this thing if somebody buys. Fortunately for me, nobody bought. I think I made $1,000 in my first 18 months that I was doing this. Not many people can float $1,000. Fortunately, I had other things going on, but that was a tough lesson. It took a long time to figure it out, and then I'm still figuring it out. But each time you have a win, each time that you find something that works, you just keep on incorporating it into your strategy, and you keep on doing it, and then eventually you have this intellectual capital. You have this institutional knowledge that you can then use to continue to build on things. Now, the one thing we underestimate. Now, again, I'm making an assumption that many of you are educators. Or in this area is that institutions, generally speaking, they've been doing this for a long time, like 50, 100 plus years they've been doing this. And we see that today, and we think that it just was easy for them, but it's like they're already far behind the time where they found that product market fit. So the first thing you need to do is to find product market fit with what you do.
Yeah, so it's obviously, like you said, it's solving a problem. So you found that dumb Jeff had a problem way back then. You worked out the solution for yourself and realised that there was others out there that were like where you came from. And that's where some people here are actually at the moment is they probably are that dumb Jeff. So they need to determine their own solution for where they're at. So from an offering perspective, what do you believe in regards to, do you offer one solution? Like, do you offer one product or service? Or do you believe that you should give different levels based on where your avatars are at any given point?
Yeah, specifically to like an online business or in general?
Well, online. Let's talk online since we're talking that.
Yeah, so my general rule is I call it niche down, like create a niche and then just go hard on that, right? That's where you want to get to, where you're like, I specifically do this for these people. I have this service for these clients. I call it a service niche and a client niche. But I think you need 10 results to figure out that piece. You need to have at least done 10 projects, worked with 10 people. You need to have had like 10 stories in your head before you can say this is the path I'm going to, before you can sense a pattern. Otherwise, it's just disparate data. You can't draw lines together if you don't have enough data points, right? So you need quite a few to get there. Now, the way that I did it, the way that I validated my idea was I had amassed a list of about 1,000 people. Now, the way that I got my first 1,000 people on my email list was about 859 of them I scraped from my LinkedIn account, and I just dropped them into MailChimp, and I started emailing them for what it's worth. You know, that was my email list. I just took all my LinkedIn contacts, and I basically said, one time I said, hey, I'm going to send you one email. You can unsubscribe. This is not spam because I can send you one. I got you on LinkedIn. I'm going to send you valuable stuff. If you want it, you got it. And like 30% of them unsubscribed. The rest of them stayed on there, and that was my beginning. And then once I had about 1,000 people on my list, what I ended up doing is I said, I'm going to create an online course. I don't know what it's about yet, but I wrote the sales headline for 8 courses. And I just said, how to win with Google AdWords, how to become a more strategic digital marketer. I basically took the names of the programs that I was teaching at the university, and I was like, I'm going to do an online version of one of my university courses. And I said, what one of these things would you pay $1 for? And I sent it to my list. I got like 50 responses, which is a pretty good response rate, and 2 to 1, or 3 times to any one other one was create a course on Google AdWords. So I had 8 ideas, and the market validated that they'd pay $1 for Google AdWords, and I had, let's call it my first $20 earmarked from that. And then before I even recorded the video, this is like once I got smart about this thing, before I even recorded one video, I did pre-orders, and I actually took money from people for that $1, and I sold it to people for $57. And I made about $5,000 before I recorded the first video of my course. So that was a huge change for me, because I spent 18 months trying to do everything, trying to be jack of all trades, and I made $1,000. And I didn't even create my next product, and I made more money than that. And I had some kind of validation that this is something that people wanted. And so that was one of the ways that I got better at this, that I did it. And so surveys are important. I don't know, surveys are a weird thing, because like, do you guys get invited to surveys all the time? Like, do you get offered a $100 Amazon gift card like 7 times a week? Yeah, that's how I'm like, yes, okay, $100 Amazon, like for a chance to win a $100 Amazon gift card. I get annoyed at those things. But they do work because you're getting the voice from your most engaged customers, or your most engaged people on your list. The ones who really care about you are going to give you that feedback. And if you have a meaningful, like enough people on your list, then you'll get enough feedback where you can start to see if this is a good idea or not. Because we get blinded. We get blinded by our experiences. We're the closest people in the world to what we do. We're the closest people to our skills, our product. So we think everything's a good idea because we got through that breakthrough, because we think everything's a good idea because it's us, like it's our knowledge. Like we think everything's great because we went and learned that. Getting validation from other people means that you have a viable product, something you can actually sell. So that's why you want to have that combination of those two things. You want to have the combination of your own knowledge, but then you want to have other people validate it for you as quickly as you can, and before you actually produce something. Otherwise, you can be like me. You can be like dumb Jeff.
It's interesting, but so many people still have to learn that lesson, don't they? They think they've got the best idea that everyone else wants out there, and so they go and create a course or something like that and put it out to market without even finding out if the market wants it, as opposed to doing it the way you've done it. So all you really did was just ask them what they wanted and then delivered what they wanted. So it's probably the best advice that you all are going to get tonight.
And try to make it worth something, because people can say they want something if it's free. That's not the same as people actually willing to pay for it. If you're actually trying to make this a commercial endeavor, then I would maybe the dollar trick, maybe like $10, something like that. Some kind of stakes in the game is a good idea.
So based on that, so obviously you had all your measurement tools in. So analytics tell a story, right? So that's the story. How easy is it for these people to be able to understand all that themselves, or is it better to get somebody else to support them to read the analytics.
Yeah, so I'm known as like the analytics guy. That's sort of the niche that I chose. I'm capable of many things, but from a consulting perspective, I said I'm the Google Analytics consultant, because I went from being like everybody else to being the guy that does this thing. And it's been really nice, because that's what people know me for, and that's where I can, that's where the leads come in, and it's very specific. I can deliver a very specific service. I can put process behind it. It can be very profitable to do that type of thing. So when I niched down, I did it to become more profitable and less stressed about consulting, frankly. Now, it's funny, as I've become an entrepreneur with like this online course area, what I teach in analytics, what I've learned is actually more like analytics for a mature marketing organization, analytics for a business that has results. Because I never looked at my analytics for like the first year that I was doing these courses, because I knew what was happening. Do you know what my analytics was? Do you know what analytics are for a startup? It's when you get an email that says that somebody paid you. It's your Stripe account, it's your PayPal account, it's your credit card statement. Those are the analytics that you need. Because frankly, if I send an email, I get a sale. I know that I sent that email, and I know that the sale came in. Because if I didn't send that email, no sales. I just did a webinar this morning. I got up at 4 in the morning to do a webinar in the US time, in the afternoon, the US time. And I knew that all the sales that came in during that 1 hour window were from the webinar. Like I knew that was happening. I don't need some kind of fancy analytics tool to get to that point. The thing is, as you get more marketing in the market, or as you get more things out in the marketplace, you do need to differentiate these sources. It's not as easy to do that, right? So depending on where you're at on the maturity of your marketing and the revenue you're bringing in, the more you do, the more you need to differentiate, the more you need to be able to project that out, the more you need to have accountability in these efforts. And so my analytics tool, it expands each time that I do a launch, each time that I expand my programs, I get better at analytics. So I'll use the analytics from my email marketing platform. I'll use Google Analytics, which is the one that I'm known for. Funny thing is, I don't always think that Google Analytics, the thing that I consult on, is the best tool for a startup. For a very small organization, it's probably overkill. And so I piece it together, and I just think about it from that perspective. And talking to business owners, that's how they look at it too. Yeah. Like basically, the bank account is the #1 analytics tool in the world. and that's something that you can't get fooled by anything else. And Google Analytics can tell you a million things, but what's coming in. And then what Google Analytics can help you do is you can say, oh, well, we had this sale. Tell me the 10 times that they came to my website. How did they get there? What do they look at? What pages did they go to? How much time did they spend on site? Did they have any errors? Did the page load fast? You can answer all those specific questions within Google Analytics. So it helps you fill in the story. It helps you fill in the blanks between I sent an email and I got a sale. And that's fascinating, because I think about everything as a funnel now, basically in my business. I sent an email out for this webinar, and I sent it out to 1,700 people. I got 375 people to register for the webinar after sending them multiple emails, reminding them over and over again. Each time that I sent a reminder, it went up by like 50 people. Sent it to another list. And then I had 140 people show up on the webinar. So let's call it 1,700 people, 340 sign up, which is already a pretty big drop off, right? So we're talking about basically, I'm going to say 20%, no, 30%. Is that 30%? Somewhere 20, 30% actually sign up for the webinar, and then only 38% of those showed up. So I just basically every step you do something, you lose something, and then about 10% of those ended up purchasing the product on the webinar. And so we're talking about from the email list to the people who bought, it's about 1% of the people ended up getting to that point. Now, that can be, basically the analytics show me that there's a lot of room for opportunity. How do I get more people to sign up for the webinar? What was the hook? What's the subject line of the email? The other thing is only about 40% of the people actually opened the email, which is crazy, right? You think that you have this email list and only 40% of them are going to open up the email. So you have all these different tweaks that you go into your business, and that's what analytics ultimately is to me, is like, where should I place my bet? Where should I try to improve to get the most benefit? Is it to get people to actually show up to the webinar? Is it to get more people to open up the email in the first place? Do you know what I mean? Like everything that you do has a drop off. And part of it is like, well, you just need more people on your list. You just need more people, because then with your drop-off rates, you're still going to get a sale. You're still going to have something happen. The other way to look at it is find the biggest hole and then plug that hole. Or do it all. Hard part is doing it all. It's impossible to do it all. So you have to sort of pick your battles. You have to just basically have information. Half the battle is having the information available to you as to where there's leaks in your process. And then basically analytics to me is just making that bet as to where I should solve it.
So there's some in the room at the moment that are definitely looking to go online and have online courses. What is some challenges that they could have that you may have experienced that you haven't already spoken about, and what are some advice that you can give to do straight away to just get it happening?
Yes, I think figure out what your objective is for going online. Is it number of students? Is it like the quantity? Is it the quality of relationships? Is it to reach a new audience? Is it money? Is it purely financial? Because depending on what your objective is, you would choose a path between them. So there are online learning platforms that have tens of thousands of people who could get into your class. You could put your course up for free somewhere, and you could get tens of thousands of people to take your course. You could just do it on YouTube and just give all your information away for free, and just make it free on YouTube, and you can get a much wider audience than if you charge $10,000 for your intellectual capital, right? So there's different ends of the spectrum. And so just be honest with yourself as to what your objective is. Now, it might be a little bit of all of the above. For many of us, it probably is, right? It's like, I want to reach people, but I want to get paid, and I want to make sure that this is a fair due, and I also see that other people are making money in doing this, so I want to make money off of it too. But I don't, there's varying levels that you can commit and you can go into this type of process. So just be very clear with what you want to do, and then ultimately your actions should all go towards that. So for example, I want to reach as many people as I can, but I also want to make money off it. All the objectives I just told you, those are pretty much my objectives at various points in time. I think that hitting 10,000 students was a pretty big goal for me. Actually, now I decided that I want to teach 1 million people. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know when I'll get to that point, but I want to have said that I had 1 million people go through my courses. That's my goal now. Well, I'm not going to be able to charge $500, which is the sticker price of my product. I don't think I'm going to get 1 million people at $500. That's a new tax bracket. That's like a private yacht type money, right? Like I have to be pretty good at selling in order to get 1 million people to pay $500. But like I said, there's varying levels. You could give away a free course and you can get a bunch of people into that, which I have done. I have a free version of my course, and then I have like the upsell to the full version of it. Maybe that's how you do it. Maybe you, I don't know, you can satisfy a lot of objectives, but you just have to be clear with what you want to do and how you want to do it. And so, does that make sense?
Yeah, so know the outcomes first. Cool, so there are plenty of platforms out there where there are free courses that you can access, and a firm belief of many is, and we actually have that here where we've got the Genius U platform where these mini university degrees are all available for free, and anyone can go and, within reason, and put theirs on there as well. And the belief is that if you offer things for free, people will pay for them. So do you find that if, give away what you've got, and then the right market, the right avatar will come along and pay for your product or service that you've got to offer, or additional support with that? Do you believe that as well? Yeah,
I think that it's so saturated. I mean, the hard part is the saturation point that everybody has. Like if I go on Facebook, if I scroll down my feed, I get like 10 online course things, people talking about their program, their free webinar type stuff. Now the new one's like, send me a message on Facebook, like the messenger bots or whatever. And so like one person they would be overwhelmed trying to actually act on all those 10 ads you see in a 1 minute scrolling session in Facebook. That would be like a week's worth of work just watching the webinars and going through their sequences and funnels. And so people are oversaturated. But it's absolutely true that if you, I could give away, and I do, actually, during my launch that I'm doing right now, I gave away stuff that I charge within the course. Like I keep on adding free lessons. So I have like 50 lessons on the course, and now I'm up to like 5 or 6 different things from within the course that you can just get for free. But you have to do them in sequence. They're not publicly available. You have to be on the email list. But I just give away stuff for free. And I think the more you give away for free, the more you show people what's inside, the more likely they are to pay. Because when people pay for a course, what I've learned is they're not paying for the course. 80% of the time, people don't finish the course. I think the stats are that between 80 and 90% of people who sign up for an online course do not finish the course. So at best, 10 to 20% are going to go all the way through. They're not paying for the actual, they're not paying for that. They're paying for the package. The way that you've summarized everything into one place, they're paying for the picture, they're paying for that safety, the security net that if they ever want to watch this thing, that it's available to them. So they'll buy it knowing that they can tuck it away if it ever comes up. And so that's ultimately what I think people end up buying with these things. And that's different than they're not, even if it's available for free, which most of the stuff that I teach, it's all, I could actually send you an article with the exact same information for free. What you're getting is you're getting my story around it, around the technical pieces of doing something, my experience around it, and you're getting the package. And to a lot of people, that's worth it because they don't have to, like, how much, it's the time value of money. How much do you value your time versus how much do you value just buying your way to something? So I give away the same training program, or I sell the same training program I use to teach employees at my company how to become Google certified. And I do that for $500. I used to have to pay, in actual resources, the time that it would take, we charged $125 per hour per person. And so basically that was 2 hours of one-on-one training time was the value of something that I deliver to you in a 12-hour course that you can do all year round. Does that make sense? So like basically for a lot of people, that's how you have to figure out what the value is. The value is going and figuring it out yourself or doing this online or doing this type of interaction between people. And that's sort of how I can validate and justify why you'd ever want to buy this thing, because it's all available for free. I learned it all for free. Some of it's from the School of Hard Knocks, some of it's just from Googling, but I learned it all. So you could do it too. But it's like, do you want to just take my course where I laid it out for you and pay for that, or do you want to spend the hours going and pursuing it? Free has a cost, a huge cost actually.
Yeah, because time has a cost, right? Okay, so I'm going to open it up to questions in a moment, but first of all, I just want to ask you one last question, and that is, where do you think things are heading digitally? It's obviously the way that marketing is going. If people aren't online in some way, shape or form, they're going to get left behind. So where are things heading in that arena?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So we can go like super far out there and talk about like mobile payments and cryptocurrencies and stuff like that, which I'm not going to go into, but I'm fascinated by that because I think that is some kind of crazy future world. But I think the phone in general opens up such a crazy world to us. Like I think that even like online is like, I think it's on the bottom, on the downward slope of the adoption curve. Like the growth has happened in online, and now it's mostly going to smaller devices, so mobile. In general, and so I think a lot of stuff's going to happen in that platform. I think that like online, like if you have a course and you can't watch it on a mobile device, that's a downside, right? All my stuff happens to be available, like you can watch it on mobile, and a lot of people now I find are watching the videos on mobile way more than I ever thought. Like they would actually like sit wherever they are and watch the courses. They're doing that type of stuff. I think, I don't know, it's funny because I've been in this long enough and I've been through the cycles that I was concerned that like social media would overwhelm us too much with information, right? Like just having Twitter constantly update. I was like, well, this is information overload. And I said that 10 years ago, and now we're 10 years later in information overload, and we haven't cracked yet. We haven't evolved to the point where we can handle all the information. We're somewhere in between, right? We haven't gone completely crazy, although the world, some people could say, has gone crazy. I'm not going to get into that, of course, but. And we haven't evolved to the point where we can process all this information that much better. I think we're better at understanding what's going on, but so I think that there's still room for expansion. Like when you think about like adoption of podcasts and you think about adoption of online education, it seems like it's saturated, but it's still a very small percentage of the population who does these things. Like we're talking in the U.S., I think that like 20% of people in the U.S. have ever listened to a podcast, and maybe like 10% listen to it regularly. And so there's a chance, that there's a huge expansion just in the market that I'm from to do that. And then you think about worldwide and developing nations and stuff like that. That's where there's a big opportunity. Yeah. But I think language obviously it creates a barrier, so you can't really go into new markets if it's not in the same language. But then is there going to be real-time translation and all that stuff? So I think there's a lot of opportunity to reach new markets as they expand. Yeah. But I think that when I feel oversaturated in a market like online education, it's because I live in a bubble anyway. I'm like already in that rabbit hole, and so it's just like fish in a barrel. You need to talk to people who are outside of this and get their opinion. Like, are they oversaturated with online courses? Have they ever thought about buying an online course? It's probably the same. I haven't done the research on like the adoption curve, but I could only assume that it's very similar to podcasts. And that is that maybe 20% have bought one course and then 10% buy them regularly or watch them regularly. And then of those, maybe 2% or 10% actually finish them.
Beautiful, thank you. Who would like to ask a question? I'll get Slavek to grab the microphone so you can hand it out. Who's got a question for Jeff? You must do. Come on, guys. All right. Can I get someone just to come and get the microphone? Thank you.
Thank you. A question. How would you set up an online course if you were going from a low end of offering something for free and then to a high end course maybe for 8 weeks? Or how would you go around? How would you do that?
Yeah.
Actually.
Do you mean technology-wise or what?
Set it up, and how would you actually go from free, having the leads, and then go through? And my question is also, when you do an online course, how would you do that? How long videos? So
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can give you. It's going to be a fairly long answer, but since nobody else raised their hand, yeah. So let's talk about the free course right now. So I have a free mini course. It's basically what I do is I take like the 5 lessons that I think are the most important of my 28 video course. This is my PPC course. I just take the ones that are important, I wrap them in an email. So basically, if you go to my homepage, it says, it's a video of me on a green screen, and it says, hey, and it's a 30-second video. It says, hey, give me your email address, and I'm going to send you this free course. And you put your name and email in there, and then you immediately get lesson 1. And then lesson 1 gets delivered, and then I have all kinds of marketing automation that does. I'm not going to confuse people with what I do, but basically a day later you get lesson 2, a day later you get lesson 3, a day later you get lesson 4, then you get lesson 5, and then we do this thing we call the bridge sequence, where we say, hey, I hope you like the mini course. Next week I'm going to tell you about something that I've never done before, whatever you say, your marketing sizzle, and you're like, I'm going to tell you about something about my full course, because if you like this, you're going to love what's behind the scenes, what's behind the gate here. And I use that. I sort of get them used to me via email. Instead of asking for all the money up front, you sort of get them to try a sample of it, and then you get into your closing piece and you say, hey, for the next, I think I do the next 3 days only, this product is available for this price. Instead of being the sticker price, I actually give them a discount. I chose a discount funnel, and it's like, and then there's like a countdown timer, and it's reminder emails like, hey, it closes tonight, your deal's done. And I think somewhere around 10% of people who go through that sequence will give me their email address and then turn into a purchaser. And that's pretty solid, actually, because if you're getting 10 people a day, that means you got a sale a day, and you're going through that process. And so you just keep on, ultimately with that type of funnel, you just need to keep on filling the top. And then it becomes a numbers game. You use paid advertising to get them in there. You use Facebook. You use all kinds of different ways to get people into that funnel. That's one way to do it. I think the other question you asked is, how do you go from concept to actual creation of a course and like deploying it online? So my process right now is I come up with an idea. I try to get some kind of validation. like through a survey or through like just talking to people, is like, do you want this? And then I concept out everything that's in my head. I come up with an outline, and I sort of figure out how many lessons do I have, what points do I want to cover, what's in there. I turn the outline into like a PowerPoint deck. I have a researcher research the concepts that I want to talk about, give me screenshots, give me stats, give me the academic support or semi-academic support behind what I'm trying to say and what I want to do. Give me the facts so that I'm not just like spitting out opinions, I'm talking about real data. And then we build out those decks, then I record it with the screen grabbing program and have my editor edit them, and then we basically put it up on our platform. And now the platform itself, I built that because I'm a developer, but there's a lot of like done for you platforms where you just drop your video file and you write your words, and then it manages access control, it manages selling the course for you, all kinds of stuff. So that's where I would get, if I were getting started, that's what I would do. I would outline it, record the videos, have some kind of finished video file, and then the course sites are all fundamentally similar. Like you have a video, you have text, and then they manage the control of it. So that's like the very brief Reader's Digest version of how you do it.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah.
Hi. I want to find out, how do you reach people that are overseas? So I have a concept for two particular destinations, but how do I reach them to find out, is this what they actually want? Like how do I reach them? How do I do that? And then, well, how do you market into a country overseas? I'm struggling with that. I'm okay with Australia, but overseas, I don't know where to start.
Can you tell me a country just so I can use it as the example?
India.
India, okay. All right, so, and you want to ask them whether they want to travel to somewhere else, or if people from Australia,
No.
where's they starting, where are they ending?
All right, no, I know that there's particular courses that are wanted in India and Sri Lanka. So I want to give them those courses.
Okay.
And I want to find out, but I need to find out, will you do this online? Is this what you want? And I don't know how to reach them. So I do have contacts in India. So I don't know whether I should go to them and say, can you put out a thing on Facebook or something? Like, I don't know where to start with that.
Well, I would say that, I mean, any modern advertising platform lets you geo-target. So you can run a Facebook ad even if you're in Australia or wherever you are. You can only go after people in India who have a certain type of, certain demographics that you want to go after in your age, gender, work history, all those demographics you want to go after. You can basically target only them. So if you have an avatar of like who this person is, or if you know somebody who is in this area, and you like when I say avatar, I mean like just do an interview with one person or a couple people, and then say, I want people like this one. You can run Facebook ads just to them. You can have them go to a simple landing page that answers your quick survey, and you get those results. That's the easiest way to do it. It's pretty cost effective. You can probably do it with solid advertising. You can probably get results for a couple dollars per response. You can do that, and then once you have enough, now you start to know whether this is something they want or not. And so targeting is actually pretty much solved from finding these people. Now there's obviously the more manual way, which is to find somebody and to put feet on the street. That might be more valuable, but it's time consuming and it's tough. And so if you just want a quick answer, I would just throw up Facebook ads, geo-targeted to India and Sri Lanka, and I would put in there the demographics that you're looking for, whoever is in your demographics.
Thank you.
Now the way you can get those demographics...
That sounded a bit too easy, didn't it?
It's relatively straightforward. Nothing's ever easy, but you could do it, like it's pretty straightforward.
So I can do a survey through Facebook to a country overseas.
Absolutely.
See, I didn't know I could do that.
And the clicks will be super cheap too, because nobody really advertises to certain countries, I guess you could say.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hiya, thanks. Yeah, I actually saw you at the DMSS
cool.
thing, and I saw your pay-per-click thing, and really interesting. But one thing that I did realise is, I'm on quite a budget with a new startup, and you mentioned that for pay-per-click advertising, it's actually quite, you have to put a fair bit of time and investment into it to do it properly, really, to get the data and the feedback, and to make a go of it. And my business is. The website is going to be built on different subdirectories, and each one is for a different language. So in terms of geo-targeting, I can have each subdirectory for a different country through Google, and then the language will obviously help it for people searching from those countries because it will be in their language. But what about pay-per-click advertising for these non-English languages? Are they mainly quite a lot cheaper in terms of pay-per-click ads? The languages are Asian languages, so Chinese. I don't think that's going to be very good because they don't use Google in China.
Yeah,
right? I've got a Chinese guy who's helping me with Baidu.
Yeah, Baidu.
But for it will be Japan, Korea, Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia. So do you think it's more possible to do pay-per-click in those countries? I mean, is it a lot cheaper? Do you know? Or?
Yeah, it's an auction-based system. So if there's not as many people who are advertising for it, then yeah, it'll be much cheaper. Now, Google's really good at squeezing out profits, though. Like what they do is they keep on raising the minimums. So it used to be you could get 5 to 10 cent clicks, and now it's like, oh well, this is $1. And so they'll even if there's nobody else competing, what they do is they basically tax you in order to show up on a non-competitive search result. And so you have to just figure out what the sweet spot is. It's definitely going to be cheaper than in the U.S. in English language, but particularly in the U.S., which is sort of the 800-pound gorilla of advertising, because there's a lot of inefficient spending because it's such a big market. The more targeted you are, the better it's going to be. So I think I don't have experience managing non-English campaigns, especially in Asia, but I can only imagine that it would be less expensive. Now, Google has their keyword tool where you can look it up, and they'll tell you whether whether it's relatively cheaper or not. And you can compare it to the equivalent in English.
Okay, so you can actually get the results in the different languages, can you, and see the data even though it's in different languages? Yeah.
Yep. So within your Google account, there's something called Keyword Planner, and you can just scan your subdirectory, and they'll tell you what keywords they think that it's about, and they'll tell you how much each bid costs.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
You do online. Which channel that you do, like YouTube or
Which
the
Analytics?
online class? Yeah.
I do one on Google Analytics and one on Google AdWords PPC.
Oh.
So on advertising. I don't do one on YouTube.
All right.
Actually, yeah.
And which channel that is good for online course, like to promote it, like Facebook or Google AdWords or?
I would say that Facebook is the best place to advertise for online courses, for sure.
Oh.
Facebook has so many people. Facebook has so much inventory for ads that the clicks are relatively inexpensive compared to Google AdWords to searches. With Google AdWords, people are they're searching for something particularly, like they might say a course on this, so they're raising their hands and looking for it. But it's sort of it doesn't vary as much as the number of people you can reach on Facebook, and so there's a fixed number of searches each month for that keyword, and in sense, it's often competitive. You end up losing, since it's so competitive, you end up paying a lot of money to advertise on Google. And unless you have a really strong marketing funnel, like a really strong closing sequence, you're not going to be able to even break even on selling a course on Google for a lot of people. And so Facebook's usually the most cost effective because it's so relatively inexpensive that you can, even if you don't have your marketing perfected yet, you can still make a profit because the click costs are very low.
Okay, thank you.
YouTube is also good as well, but you have to be good on video, and you have to be like, there's a certain quality that goes above and beyond a text ad or an image ad. You know what I mean? So like video is like the next frontier. If you get really good on video, then you can use YouTube to do this as well.
Okay, thank you.
So, question from my side. I'm living proof that the stuff which you are doing is awesome, because I bumped into Jeff's courses incidentally like 1 year ago or so, having some experience with Google Analytics and with PPC. I just like opened it, being curious, like what is going on, and basically it was like a encountering page turner. I was just like thrilled by someone explaining Google Analytics and explaining PPC in a way which is really engaging, and it was one of the best courses I ever seen, which is like I'm living proof because I passed all the Google certification exams, so I'm AdWords and Analytics certified. And I highly recommend to you to just try and to see what is the thing that Jeff is talking about, because you can easily find it online. From my side, there is a question, because I found you like one of your courses by flash sale site, and this is one of the leading channels for acquiring new customers. If you would like to get yourself out to the broader audience, what are your experiences with this acquisition channel?
Yeah, so of the 10,000 students that I've had, I think I sold about somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 on my own, and then I sold 8,000 through a daily deal website, basically like a Groupon. It's called AppSumo, and it was a massive discount. It was about 10% of the sticker price that they could buy it for, and they just give you like an injection. You know, you get it. It's like Walmart basically. It's like putting your product in Walmart. You're not going to get your great margins on it, but you're going to get market share. You're going to get people out there, and so I thought it was a great experience because my goal is to educate as many people as I can. It also does give you a cash injection once the deal is done, but it also sort of cheapens your ability to do marketing on your own. So it makes your own marketing, it undermines it, obviously. Because if you're doing your own marketing and saying, buy this thing now for this much, and then it's 10% of that price on a deal website, something where they can like look up this website deal, then it undermines what you do. So what it did to my business is it gave like a hangover. It gave like a shot in the arm, and it gave me like a good cash injection. Then it was like a hangover on my own marketing, and then it's a shot in the arm. And that's not really how I want to run a business in the long run. But it was something that I wanted to do for many reasons, because there is strength in numbers. To have a lot of people test your platform, to know that you can get, you know, I had thousands of people sign up, or like 1,000 people in one day signed up, and my system didn't break. I figured out how to do support. I figured out so many things about my business by doing that. I'm probably not going to do another flash sale if I don't have to, but it gave me enough money that I can reinvest in marketing. I've actually hired marketing people to market my courses now from the money that I got from that. And so I think it was a good idea. I think it's for anybody considering that, like if that's how you want to get people into your course, it is definitely a way that a lot of online courses are sold, since it's a very high margin product. Like the variable cost for me to add another customer to my course is very low. I'm not going to tell you how low, because you'd be like, wow, this is crazy. But you can only imagine that if it's an online thing that you've already created, the cost to have one more customer in there is the cost of delivering them the emails. It's the cost of hosting your website. And that's just a fraction of it. So there's very little very little marginal cost to adding a new person, and so you can survive doing some kind of deal with that type of stuff. But it also it undermines your own marketing, I guess you could say. So yes, if your goal is to get more people on the platform, that's a good way to do it. Charge less, either through a daily deal website where they have a 1 million person list, or just charge less on your own website and try to make it up in market share, or try to make it up in volume. I don't know if that helps or not.
It does. And one more question, because you consider yourself as an educator, like educating 10,000 people to be Google certified. I assume that like a couple of dozens of thousands pass through your content. What is the role of other channels? Because you visit conferences, you take all the speaking gigs, you're living your digital nomadic life. That's how I assume that there is not only PPC out there to be recognized and positioned as authority in your field.
Yeah, like how do you prioritize, or how do you, like, what's the value of doing all these things?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good question. I think the speaking thing's a particularly interesting one because it had a very clear path to revenue when I was at my agency. If I got up on stage and I talked about a solution that I provided, people would come up to me afterwards and say, I want that solution. And then I would, we'd give them a proposal, and I won a lot of business by doing that. Now, since I stopped doing a lot of consulting, going up on stage, the objective is a little bit different. It might be to sell my courses. It might just be because I enjoy it. And so part of it's just that I enjoy it. Part of it is that every time that you do something, every time you say yes to some kind of marketing opportunity, it increases your brand. Now, brand is a really difficult thing to measure. It's impossible. Like, if there's a brand score of 100, does a speech, is that worth 0.1? You know what I mean? Like, how much is that worth, doing one thing? I don't think that any one thing is worth anything at all, but the collective of what you do to build a brand is worth everything. Your brand is everything that you have, right? And so ultimately, I do these things because somebody in this room might be like, hey, Jeff, I created an online course based on what you talked about in that room, and I didn't make the mistakes that you did. You could become somebody could get to that point where they want to be based on this conversation alone. They could actually find the opportunity, not make the mistakes, not stall out for 18 months, and have something there. And so that might be worth it alone, right? Or it might be something where, who knows? You never know what opportunity is going to come out. Basically, the return on speaking in general is about maybe 3 years. Like, it takes 3 years for something to come out of a speaking gig, but it could end up changing your entire life. And that's why I do it, because it's actually the most impossible to define thing that I do. It brings me to the coolest places, and it's one of the only ways and it's a way to meet new people in a way that, like, there's nothing like in person. You know what I mean? Like, the quality, the value of 20 relationships in person is probably worth 20 times the value of one online relationship, right? So, it's 20 times more valuable.
Thank you. No more questions?
You mentioned good videos. What is good videos on YouTube?
Say that again, please.
Can you sum it up? What is a good video?
A good video.
Someone presenting something
sure,
on YouTube.
Yeah. So, well, that's. Oh yeah, that's. So I'm picturing in my mind like the avatar of what a good video is, and now I'm trying to think of how I can describe it to you in a way that actually makes sense. So that's without the common knowledge of what it is. So what I meant by good was I meant production quality. Like, I see videos of people who are handheld on a cell phone and they don't have like professional audio, and I see that like hey, I'm just talking into the on iPhone microphone and I'm handheld and moving it around. I don't think that's the type of video that's going to sell you a lot of courses. It doesn't have the credibility, it doesn't look polished, and it just looks like they could have done it. You know what I mean? Like, so what I mean by quality is like when somebody sees it and they say, oh, that looks like a professional did it. That looks like they made an investment in that video. Now, that's also just something that, like, I'm afraid of doing video because I want it to be perfect. I actually have a degree in video production. And so I got it drilled into my head that it had to be perfect, that it had to be this, and that. And so I'm personally scared about it. I think that other people have less fear because they're just like, I just want to get my message out there. And so I think that when you think about anybody who's been successful on YouTube, their first video is not nearly as good as their 100th video or their 1000th video. And actually, that's just for anybody. Your first blog post is going to be crap. Your first video is going to be terrible. Your first podcast is not going to be very good at all. Nothing that you do is going to be good the first time you do it. Even no matter how naturally talented you are. I think we always think that people are overnight successes, or we see YouTube stars and we think that they just had it. And we don't see the 5 years of struggle to get to the point where they breach the water like an iceberg. And that's how all this stuff works, is that you just need to keep on doing it. I actually have a very popular thread on the website Quora, and somebody says, I feel like I missed the boat on blogging. It's whatever, it's 2014 and I haven't started yet. Am I gonna be, what's gonna happen? And I said, here's my blogging advice for you. Create a blog and write a post every single day. Do it for 100 days in a row, and then delete the blog entirely. Just delete it from the face of the earth, from the internet. And then start over on day one, and you'll actually be a good blogger. You'll actually have a good post, and you'll actually have something to say. And like that's ultimately what I think you need to do. Is like the best time to start blogging was 5 years ago. No, it was 10 years ago. The second best time is now. The best time for you to start doing your YouTube videos was 5 years ago. The second best time is now. So if you haven't done it yet, now is probably the time you would want to start. Now, I hate it when I go to speeches and people always, they're like, well, you need to do this, this, and that, and then they have like, it's almost like tone deaf is for me to tell you what you need to do. But what I can tell you is that you don't need to do 10 things, you should probably just do one thing well. Right. Just choose that one thing, right? Just choose one thing that sounds cool, that you want to try, that you actually could see yourself doing 100 times and not getting sick of it and not being tired of it, and try that out and see if it works.
Yeah. And not being typical and being you, like really being you authentically and not faking it is a big asset, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. If there was one final tip that you could leave everyone here that is to do with, say, digital marketing, what would it be?
I think that was a tip right there. Just basically to pick one channel, one thing that you want to do, and commit to doing it. So if you want to try doing video, there's something going around on Facebook right now with a bunch of people I met at the DMSS conference and that I met here, and they're doing a 90-day video challenge. 90 days, they've committed every day for 90 days to post a video. And they're getting better with each one. They're starting to put like titles and graphics in there. They're getting better at this thing, and they've been doing it for like 15 days, however long I've been here. And I proved to you earlier I don't know how long I've actually been here. And so they just started. And the reason why they did it is because they all met at the conference, and they're like, let's just do this. We're going to start doing videos. And they all challenged each other. And then they challenged other people. And now I have like in my Facebook feed 10 people who are doing a video every single day. Most of them are still not that good. It's only 10 days. But they just did it. They just committed to it. So that's something you could try. Now, you don't have to do this thing, just because you try something doesn't mean it needs to be commercial. Doesn't mean that you have to like try to make money off of it right away. In fact, the most successful people never try to monetize their capital until they've built up an audience. So a general rule is don't try to monetize until you have between 1,000 and 10,000 fans, 1,000 true fans. I'm sure you've heard of that before. But get to a certain level, and then you can consider monetizing. But make the first goal shouldn't be commercial, because everybody can see that. It's obvious when somebody's trying to sell you on something. You want to. I think the best brand you can create is one where when you try to sell somebody on something, they say, "Take my money." And actually, that's something I've been working on with my business as well. For this launch that I'm doing, the one that I announced this morning, I actually had 2 people who said, "Jeff, take my money." Before I even had the cart ready to go, they go, "I just want to buy this. I don't care. Stop marketing to me. Take my money, Jeff." That was a pretty good sign, right? So basically, giving away all that intellectual capital, people lining up with credit card in hand to buy something. That's the level you probably want to get to, is where somebody says, "Take my money," instead of having to force them or try to be coy or try to take money from them. They want to give you the money. That's what you can do, and that all comes down to giving more value. Just giving. That's how this works. Give more value than you take, and you'll end up doing really well in this online marketing world.
Perfect ending. Thanks, Jeff.